There's actually two parts of the elite class out there. So you know, this is one of the reasons why I left the Brotherhood. You have the elite class that is benefiting society. And then there's what's called the parasitical elite class, which lives off of society. The parasitical elite class, unfortunately, is a majority, and they live off your labor. That's the reason why they want you to stay at the levels you're at. But they want you to believe you have opportunity, that there is free enterprise, that you have freedom. Let me tell you something. When you go to a job and you work for 50 years and you bring home your paycheck, you're just barely making ends meet. You're paying off the mortgage, the car payment, the insurance payments. You're just basically paying off the student loans for your kids to go to college. You ain't free. You're a slave. You're just like a slave picking cotton. You are a slave. You think you're free. You think you're part of the free enterprise system. But you're not, you're a slave. You are a slave. And in this lecture, I don't have time to get into all the details, but the way the interest rates are and the fees on loans and credit cards are set up, and the way the taxes are set up, it's a built-in slavery system, which is why 97% of people in America, and it's worse in other countries, in America, are born and they die. And when they die, they have less than $1,000 in the bank. They've been a slave their whole life. They've basically worked their whole life making other people wealthy and allowing other people to live their dreams. And statistics vary, but it's said that 99% of people in America, and again, other countries are worse, die with most of their desires unfulfilled. How sad. Society members, the elite class, throughout history believed that they were genetically programmed to be, in fact, now by the way, let me say, this is not me. I am not saying this. It's not that I believe it. I adhere to this. That's not what I'm saying. I'm giving you historical facts, okay? So from a historical perspective, throughout history, the elite class of society, the ruling classes, and that's defined as, for, a couple hundred years ago and beyond, it was primarily the royal families, the kings and the royal families, the rulers of the countries, number one. And then the elite class of industry, those who controlled, most people don't know the history behind this, those who controlled the monopolies of the world's necessities. So the two basic ruling classes, and it's the same today, they're just called different things, but first is the rulers of countries, the rulers of the people, countries, royal families. And then secondly, those who control the monopolies of the necessities of the time. So throughout history, those monopolies were different. For many centuries, it was salt. So those who controlled the salt monopolies. In American history, it was the railroads, the banking, because you had to bank, you had to travel and use the railroads. There was no option. So if you control those monopolies, obviously today it is oil. Whether the price of oil is $50 a barrel or $200 a barrel, people are driving about the same and using about the same amounts of oil. It's something that is a necessity. Food throughout history has always been a necessity, so those who control food supply. So that's the elite class. So the elite class of people always believed that they were genetically programmed to be superior, smarter thinking, and to be genetically programmed to rule over the vast majority of people who had a different genetic model. These genetic models that they were referring to were vibrational. The DNA of blue bloods, the DNA of the ruling class throughout history, the DNA of the elite class, because they actually intermarried between one another and, quote, didn't, go to the other side of the tracks, and this is historical, I'm just giving you a historical perspective, their DNAs actually vibrated at different frequencies than, let's say, the working class, which vibrated at a lower frequency. And throughout history, the ruling classes always wanted to make sure that those workers kept their vibration at a much lower frequency. So in China, for example, I'll give you a history lesson in the future. But China, for example, the rulers made sure that they controlled opium, the drug, and made sure that the majority of Chinese workers were taking opium on a daily, regular basis. That drug keeps the vibrational frequency very low and makes sure that desires don't spring up, and therefore these people will be docile and never want to do anything substantial in their life. Therefore the rulers remain the rulers and the workers remain the workers. So throughout history, the concept that the brain actually emits and transmits vibration, frequency, or energy, and receives vibration, frequency, or energy. That concept, that factual, biological, quantifiable, scientifically proven and documented concept, not fantasy, not mysticism, not spirituality. We're not saying you have to believe on faith. This is quantifiable. That fact, still to this day, is something that the elite class and the members of the various societies globally around the world in all the countries want to keep secret. That is the major fact that they want to keep secret. Not the law of attraction. The fact that your brain is the one that transmits frequency. That is the major thing that is desperate amongst the elite class to keep secret. Now, when you consider today, just like throughout history, the rulers around the world of the various countries are mostly members of secret societies. Past President Bush was a well-known, documented member of Skull and Bones. These people who founded the C.I.A., watched the movie The Good Shepherd, well-known members of the Skull and Bones secret society of Yale University. Senator John Kerry, many senators, many U.S. Supreme Court justices are mostly members of secret societies. Actually, all of today's billionaires, if you pick up the magazine that talks about the billionaires of the world, every single one of them are members, and many of them readily admit membership into secret societies. So all the people that control the governments, all the people that control today's monopolies, what monopolies are we talking about? The monopolies are necessities that no matter what the economy, it still is being used. So food is obviously one of the most important commodities and necessities. So those around the world that control food supplies. When you go to various countries, there are sometimes in many countries there are less than 50 people that control virtually all the food supply in those countries. In America, for example, when you go into a restaurant, do you know that 90% of all restaurant food is supplied by one supplier? They control the food. So people control food supply, that's a monopoly. Those who control oil, that's a monopoly. Those are the two most prevalent. There's about 12 other monopolies as well. But those are the two obviously most common and prevalent. So these people that control these monopolies do not want you to know the truth about your own ability. And what we're talking about here, and what Einstein talked about, and what Thomas Edison documented, they documented this fact scientifically. is that your brain emits a frequency or an energy. It transmits a frequency, a vibration, or an energy. It also receives it. Okay? So that is the fact. And the reason why we haven't heard more about it is because the people that control the free flow of information globally do not want you to know it. Because if you do know it, then you will realize how much power you have, and that you in fact have Aladdin's lamp and your own personal genie, which can make anything you want happen. With this knowledge and how to use this knowledge, you can have, be, or do anything you want. You have the power. The goal of the elite class is to make sure that they remain in the elite class and that everybody else remains virtually slaves. There's no uprising, there's no major large groups of people realizing that they have power and rising to the level that they want to rise to. That creates competition, and that reduces the power and control and the financial resources of the current elite class. So that's why it's happening.